Well, today we're arguing with experts. I'm glad to see you came back. Goodness. Today is the 20th or 21st of November. And approximately a week ago, I'm not sure just what the date was. I don't even remember now just which day it was. But roughly a week ago. And I had been in a fibro flare for about 2 weeks at the time. Still am. Got a call from a student I had 6 months ago, roughly. Might have been 5, might have been 7 months, doesn't matter. I was, as part of the class I was giving, I had brought 10 pounds of log. Suet is another name for it. And I taught the making of tallow candles, or just block tallow. And I also taught how to make fix and wax in that class. Well, last week when I got the phone call from this student, and his daddy was on the phone too, and this is the same student and father who were questioning me about something else I taught a few months ago. And they'd seen a so-called expert with a bigger, more impressive channel saying something and getting it wrong. Or at least they didn't know it was wrong. They thought I was wrong. You see, this expert has somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 viewers, subscribers. And I've got just over 300. So who am I to be teaching stuff? And this other guy who must know what he's talking about is saying something totally different. Well, yeah, you guessed it. The expert being hauled over the fire today is Dave Canterbury. And the video in question was on tallow. Now, I'm going to basically let Dave tell you his tale by showing you an edited down version of his video. His video was almost half an hour. And I'll leave a link down in the description. You can go watch his whole video if you want. But I think you'll get the point of the arguing with the experts idea just from the just barely more than 5 minutes of it that I've cut out to include here. About the points where he's... Please understand, what he created in the video is a grease lamp. And I'm not arguing with whether a grease lamp is useful or not. Very useful. The part I'm arguing with is, here's a guy, and I made this point in the last video. Oh, he is so well researched. He researches an item thoroughly before he makes a video. His own words. I'm quoting his own words here. Well, the trouble is this. And I will make this point clear over the length of this video. Tallow comes from just two places. From just two animals. Tallow only comes from beef or mutton, aka sheep. And it only comes from the leaf fat, aka suet, the fat that builds up between the liver and kidneys in those two animals. Now you're going to say, but Embarado, you can get leaf fat from other animals, from raccoon, from bison, from what have you. Yes, you can. And you might even call it suet. But when you render it, you have to call it grease, not tallow. Why is that? Well, let me give you an analogy. Some of my viewers will know and appreciate this, and others may not understand it because they don't use the product. That product is bourbon. Where does bourbon come from? Bourbon is just whiskey. But yet you tell a manufacturer of bourbon that it's just whiskey, and he'll shoot you. My brew is not whiskey, it's bourbon. You see, the makers of bourbon think their product is better because they brew their brew in Bourbon County, Kentucky. And anybody who tries to call their whiskey bourbon that isn't from Bourbon County when they make it, they get sued. Just like for centuries, the makers of Scotch whiskey, which can only be brewed in Scotland, would sue their competitors from Ireland, England, the continent, for trying to call their whiskey Scotch. It's not, because it wasn't made in Scotland. The whole point is that's branding. It's branding your product to try and give it more of a panache. That's the whole idea. So now let me make it clear. Tallow has been recognized for a millennia as coming from beef and mutton, and only from the kidney fat, the suet of those two animals. And fat from any other animal is just grease, just fat. But here's the part that I'm also going to argue with Dave about. Pay close attention to where Dave got the fat from that he renders down. It wasn't even kidney fat. It was scrapings from the fleshing beam. In other words, it was AKA muscle fat, not kidney fat. So, like I said, he rendered down the fat to make a grease lamp. And he did a fine job of it. He just kept calling it tallow, and it's not. And that was the problem I had with my student. I told them that tallow only came from beef kidney fat or from sheep kidney fat. No place else. And that was what they were questioning me on. So now I'm going to bring forth some other experts after I show you Dave. And I think I'm even going to make the point of showing you just how many times he calls it tallow in his video. And Dave, if you watch this, understand something. It's kind of like the Democrats trying the same thing over and over and over again and expecting to get a different result. Just because you say something 15 or 20 times in a half-hour video, don't make it so. It just don't. And this coming from the guy who thinks he's so well researched. So without further ado, I'm going to send you over to hear what Mr. Canterbury had to say. And then I'll come back and talk to you after that.
Everybody with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and we've got our fleshing beam here that we've been fleshing off the hides from the animals that we've actually been taking off the trap line, and we've released well over 50% of what we've caught. We're only harvesting what we are going to use, and that's what we did all during the class. Anything we harvested, we ate it, we put up the fur, and part of that utilization of the animal is rendering down some of this fat. This loose fat that's on this fleshing beam. Don't worry about if it's got a few leaves or sticks or anything like that in it right now. You can take that off later or separate it later. Right now, just get the major chunks of fat in there and the major chunks of leaves and things like that out. Don't worry about the small stuff. Just get the little stuff out. And you can use this to render down, especially if you're using it for non-edibility or medicinal things like that. You can render this down a couple days after the fact. It's not a big deal. Alright, so we have collected all of this into a pot for rendering, and now we're going to just put this over a low fire. Now as this thing's cooking, we're going to want to come in here every once in a while and just kind of stir things around. Starting to already build up some liquid in the bottom of this thing. That's rendered fat. Like I said, this is going to take a little while. And one of the things I plan to do with this fat is make a fat lamp, or just a quick grease lamp. To actually make a pretty nifty little lamp in a small mason jar, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do with this rendered tallow when we get this done. In tallow, we put it in here, and then we're going to put our tallow inside. And this tallow may not be solidified with this tallow, so it's a very, very multifunctional item. The lamp is just a bonus, as well as protecting things like wood handles, knife blades. All those types of things can be dressed with this tallow, so it's a very, very multifunctional item. The lamp is just a bonus to show you that it can be used as a fuel as well. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and put this in the jar, because it'll be easier just to pull that back out of there once we get it soaked with tallow. So we'll just shove it down into the jar all the way for the moment, like this. And then we'll get this jar filled with some tallow. And we really versatility and that much more life out of the amount of tallow that we can get from one raccoon or two raccoons. I'd say there's probably a couple raccoons worth of tallow in that bucket right there from this class this weekend. So now that I've got it in there and I've got it soaking the wick, I'm not going to leave it in there until it's for a candle. Alright, so there's our raccoon tallow candle. Alright guys, well, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me today for a video on rendering tallow and some of the uses for raccoon tallow out here.
Okay, I think I've made this point quite clear. I won't belabor it much here. So instead what I'm going to do is talk about my next segment. In this next segment, I'm going to bring forth video from a guy who's been, well, between him and his father, they have been providing supplies and doing research to help reenactors for over 4 decades.